You ready?
No. Full screen.
Full screen. I'm going for it. I apparently can't get out of full screen, so let's see what happens.
At least the drum doesn't do anything. It's like our
I'm not supposed to put any here. Yeah, so we had a small game jam the other day. I can go out and stuff now. Let's see if that works. If I do this and I hit play, and I then still escape something happen. Alright, great. Hey! Oops. It's gonna be hard. I have both the beer and the mic. Finish one. We'll have beer breaks, okay? Hi, I'm Julie, which some of you know already, I guess. This is the first logo I've ever made, and probably also my last. Shit, blinded by the light or some things, man. And that's into here. So this is a logo for a game I'm working on called. We like to believe that it's called X to Die Ragnarok, because it's about the series of events that are happening during Ragnarok in Norse mythology. Fighting a lot of beer and pork meat, where I come from. Okay, nothing is working, this is great. Yay! That's me, that was me. What the fuck is up with Keynote? Anyways, that's the game. Yay! And I want to show you a few things of what I've been sort of researching, I would call it, the last year. Because I originally created X and put it on an iPad. Gosh. So I always walk around a lot and I'll probably be in front of the screen all the time. That'll be fine, right? And then someone told me that, oh, this is a horror game, Julie, you should do it in VR instead. And I happened to have access to an Oculus Rift, the DK1, because it was in the Unity office in Copenhagen, and we sort of used to, before a game jam, pass by the Unity office, grab the Oculus Rift and take it to a game jam, and then return it. And then I just did that once and forgot to return it. And then I worked on it sort of a week before I was going to an event in Poland where Sats invited me for CTG and PGA. And I told people I would bring it a game that ran on the Oculus Rift, DK1, and a week before I decided I would actually fix and make that game. So it didn't take me a long time to sort of drag in the prefabs that you download in the Oculus SDK into the build. But what took me a long time was to make my game look like something I actually wanted to show to people, because what happens when you're inside the world in virtual reality, sorry, I drank that beer way too fast. What happens is that you get extremely close to like all details, textures, etc. And I'm very much a hacker developer, so I downloaded all my assets from the Unity Asset Store and done some random tweaking, because I don't really know what I'm doing when I make games. So I spent a week on trying to polish up my random stuff so it looked somewhat decent. And I hope this video will play. And as you can see, I made everything grayscale because that was prettier than what I had back then. And at that point, how many of you guys have gotten to play it while I've exhibited here? Okay, there are quite a few of you. So you see now it's actually in colors. What an involvement since last year. Back then I only had a level where you're inside of a cave and you're being chased by a wolf. And I threw people straight in there. And for most people who played this game, this was the first VR experience and the first Oculus Rift experience. So a lot of people will be sort of like standing and swaying a little bit, and I had like big grown-up men who would stand and shake their legs like this. And I actually, to get this to work. I had to hold a lot of people physically, which is sort of like quite an exercise when you're exhibiting for 3 days alone in a booth. And so a lot of my friends came and helped me out because they could see I was about to die. And I realized that it was probably not the best thing to throw people straight into like a crazy bumpy cave where they got a wolf in the face as soon as they entered the game. Was that me making a weird sound? Was that just in my head? Okay. That's the wolf. Oh, shoot. Okay, so I continued working on the game for a little bit. So once in a while I brought it to India, and I had sort of fixed some of the things through level design, but I still had like an iceberg in India playing like this. And this was where I was really confirmed in the belief that I had to change something so people were not jumping around because they could get injured. Oh, I'm jumping in time now. So actually, there's a photo I don't have, and that was that Torsten and I and some other guys, we decided it would be a great idea to do a small event in Berlin around New Year's Eve. And just before that, I'd been working on adding a preceding level that was less sort of hectic, which meant that people were kind of lured into VR, and you like had snow coming down into your face, and you would walk like slowly around a path, and there would be no enemies. And I exhibited that for the first time in Berlin, and then I went to GDC with that game, and it actually meant that you can see now I could actually let people play the game without having to hold them, and also don't have to like observe them all the time. I still had to make sure that people did not get tangled in the cables, which is still sort of a bitch to me. But at least back then with the DK2, you had a really long cable. So actually in Poland, I could sort of hang the cable over whatever the bar was called of our booth, and that helped out a lot. So when I went to Amaze this year in Berlin, things were a little bit different because you were sort of lured into the game. Let me see. Just want to see. This is actually Carl, the audio designer of the game. This is the first time he tries it in VR. And the thing is, with this build, I'm just going to turn it down a bit. So with this build, you had 2 levels where you walk through a snow landscape, but it was still kind of bulky, and I kind of sometimes had people standing and jump in there, but not have an effect of it, which means that it kind of breaks the immersiveness. And also here, people saw each other playing it one after the other, and that meant that and you'll see one of the girls at one point, when people got tangled in the cables like this, they actually knew that they had to turn around 360. But what I realized after this, I'll have to see if I can actually move in and out from Unity and Keynote as I wanted to, elsewise I'll take that at the end. But what I realized was that the preceding level had to be even more sort of clean, less bulky, and you had to more straight, so you didn't have to turn around too much. Because as soon as you're aware of like the cable strangling you, that breaks the immersiveness, and that's not something you want when you're doing something for VR. You want people to stay in that space and not have to think too much about whether they're falling into someone, they're hitting someone, or whether, oh, and yeah, as you can see here, so we've created the game for a PS3 controller, because it's wireless, so at least there's one cable left for that, and we run it mainly run it on a Mac. Originally the design was created for Move controllers, but I realized when bringing that to expos, first of all there's a little bit with the calibration that I'll talk about later, but also bringing it to expos you need quite a lot of space if people are fighting like this. And since it's very much a game that we travel with to play test it and to figure out how we make better design, we decided to have it more sort of low-key on a PS3 controller. Now what, I'll have to go back to this so I can actually... Shit, I'm not allowed to swear, right? How do we get out of this shit?
It's live. It's broadcasted.
Bloody damn hell. Fuck it. Yeah, I have Tourette's. I'll show something in Unity. and I hope you can hear and see what I'm doing. Just want to show you how it looks currently. So I merged 2 levels into one. So this screen setup is really fucked, so it's a little bit hard for me to show you. But you technically start up here. There are a lot of spoilers here, but this is just a prototype of the game. We're changing everything completely right now. Where you start up here, sort of in a canyon, where you start and you're sort of lurk into what's that called in English? Anyways, you're inside a canyon and there are some statues, so people automatically when they start the game, like they stand still for a little bit, start the game, and then they automatically look up and then they start moving. That's what most players are doing in this game. And then you walk through this path and then you see your little snow giant comes towards you, and you can sort of choose whether you want to go right or left, and then you enter a cave over here. But as you can see, this is sort of a very straight level where you don't have to turn much. And the thing is with the controls that I've created for this game is that you always move in the direction you're facing. Talk a little bit about controls later. And then you enter this maze of a cave. See, that's quite crazy, right? Say yes.
Yes. No.
So, who of you who tried it felt they got completely lost in the cave or ended up in a loop? Most people, exactly. Because I find it extremely funny to do maze games, but the problem is that people can't actually find their way in or out, and actually this cave is closed. I'm a bitch. But the thing is that for very much in the beginning you go pretty straight and then you turn around a little bit, but as soon as you turn around too much, and sometimes the wolf actually comes from behind, and that was also just again me being mean towards the player, then you'll have to do these sudden movements that most people are scared of doing. If you played it for a while, then normally you feel more safe in playing it. And what's very important when you do VR is that you want to make sure that the player does not is immersed, as I said the whole time, does it not break that immersiveness. That's one of the key rules, at least in my opinion. So I'm not talking as an expert, I'm just talking from my experience. So the issue is that whenever you get tangled in the cables and whatever happens, it's just really annoying as a game designer, because then you know that they're sort of like broken from the experience for a little while. Let me go back to Keynote. Okay. I don't know why I have to go out of it every time. So I'll stand up again because I can't actually sit down and talk for whatever reason. So this was what I explained with the statues. I sometimes do it when I build it. I sometimes do it so I actually turn the player around when you start, so you automatically look up and you feel, okay, I'm trapped, there's no way out, and you turn around and then you already have that feeling. And so the way we've matched the controls is that everything is one-to-one with how you move. There are some people who sort of fake that, but it's very hard balance if you fake it and for instance that you actually turn more than you do in real life, or also just and another thing we've been discussing, especially these days, is whether you should have strafing in a VR game, because a lot of hardcore gamers say like, hey, you should have strafing in here. This time, you should have strafing in here on the right joystick. And the thing is, it sounds kind of cool, and it probably worked for some people. But whenever you move without actually physically moving as well, you can get a little bit nauseous, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And this is how our art director Marianne, she designed the valley in the beginning, but I made it more straight because I knew these things were like you turning around too much, you do tend to get tangled, and also, especially in the beginning, you're very likely to get motion sick. Are you guys sitting with coffee cups on your noses? It's very cute. Sorry. I don't know what I thought. It looked really fun from over here. Oh yeah, that is our Jotun. That's hopefully how we're gonna get it closer to have more sort of dense forest walking through. Oh yeah, so you can see this is actually part of our new cave design. For you guys, I've been discussing VR with the past couple of days. Can you see? Okay, I'll explain it. So you have this maze you go through. You can look into this dome there in the middle, and And then you continue sort of through the maze, and it doesn't help when I'm pointing here because you can't see that. But you continue through the maze, and then you enter a dome. And then you can see these stairs, and then you're supposed to walk up the stairs and walk out of the level. What is the main flaw with this level design?
You've got to turn all the way around.
That's actually not the main flaw. That's one thing that you just can't do in VR. Stairs, exactly. You can't do stairs. You can't do stairs, because how are you going to do stairs? Like in our game, we don't have an avatar. That's a choice by us, because the calibration is sometimes a little bit, sorry, I'm swearing again, fucked up. So it means that it very much breaks immersiveness when you play with an avatar in a game, in my opinion. Again, I'm no expert, but I'm making a game I want to play. But the thing is actually doing stairs. You'll have to look down on feet that may or may not exist, and you'll actually have to take steps. It's pretty damn hard if you're just sort of either standing on spot or you're sitting down and playing. I'm not a fan of sit-down VR experiences for many reasons. I get extremely motion sick, but also because I feel it's way more natural that you're actually standing up when playing, and I would love to hear some opinions about that in a sec. Yeah. So let me just run through sort of the different hardware stuff that's outside out there. So how many of you have tried the DK1? Okay. What was the main issue for, like, anyone just raise your hand and say what was your main issue with DK1?
Too many pixels.
Too many pixels.
Very size.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Not enough pixels, and it kind of looked bulky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many of you have tried the DK2? And what is the main difference there?
Smaller pixels.
And what else comes with the DK2 that not that many people? Yeah, positional tracking. Oh, so you already had leaning on DK1 actually. That came in an SDK update. So we already had leaning in that. But the thing is, in DK2 you have positional tracking. Oh, and now I forgot to take the other DK2 up here with me. But you have a camera that you can put on the laptop or desktop or whatever you're playing it on. So you can put it in front of you, and then you can actually have positional tracking in a certain range. If you, for instance, sit down, that I'm not a fan of, and you can have positional tracking there, but the problem is if you actually move out of this range, you'll just sort of get a black screen and it says out of range. So that's one way of doing positional tracking. Can be cool for some things, you can like put your head through walls and so on, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it in my opinion, but I'm not being too London frank. And then there's the Sony Morpheus. How many have had a chance to try that one out? Gosh, I should really tell them to come to South Africa, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Problem is they don't travel too much with the dev kits, so they're only explained at sort of big events like Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show and GDC. But when I saw this at GDC this year, I was insanely happy because they actually had the setup that I had in the very beginning with X2I. I started working at X2I last summer, and then more and more people joined the team over the duration of a year. But originally, as I said, I had the two Move controllers, and that was the demo they were showing. We're running with two Move controllers and the Morpheus, and the big difference here is, and they were standing up demoing it, like every player was standing up. Different is here that they have a light in the front and in the back, which means that it actually tracks you when you're turning around. So that just kind of melted my heart. And I had a very amazing opportunity this summer after doing a talk at the Develop in the UK, that some of the guys from the demo team there, the Worldwide Studio guys, they asked me if I wanted to have a chat about the demos they were making and also show me our stuff in their office. And I'm still completely blown away about what they're doing. And then I was in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. I was over for United PAX, and oh gosh, I had a chance to go into this room. Does anyone know what it is?
Valve.
That's Valve. That's a demo room. So they have another way of solving the positional tracking, and pretty much what they've been doing is, and by the way, I didn't take this picture, it was on the internet. I hope I'm not breaking any sort of rules about whether to take pictures of Valve or not. They were pretty open about everything what they were doing. They also believe in stand-up experiences, which is really nice because that kind of comforted me as a game designer. So what they've done is, And I still don't know what these are called, to be honest.
Markers.
Yeah, that was kind of the word we found yesterday. Is it just markers and that's it? Okay. What? Glyphs? Okay. So they've plastered the walls with this, and then you're wearing something that used to look like this. That was one of the early prototypes. It was not the one I was wearing, but it was a bit similar with, so I don't actually have a photo of that, so I cheated a bit, and again I went on the internet. So I was wearing something where it went all the way down to here, so it didn't have that sort of close feeling that the Oculus has. So you could actually see your hands, which is also a thing the Sony Morpheus has. You can actually see your hands. So for instance, if you need to figure out the controls, you can see them. And in the beginning, I thought they would break the immersiveness, but actually after a while, you completely ignore it. It was pretty nice when I was in the VR room because I was getting close to the walls all the time. Because I've been working in VR for a year about a year now, so I walk around a lot when I'm in VR. I'm not so scared of it. But the Dr. Church who showed me this, he would be like, Julie, there's a wall. I'm like, oh, fuck it. But I'll look under it and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, there is actually a wall. It looked more like this. I know this is sort of some early stuff they did, but it was more like having something similar to an Oculus on, and then there was a small camera that was looking for all the markers. It's quite challenging to set up this at home. I think it's one of those things you're like, don't do this at home. And ever since I tried this, so I only tried the non-interactive demo because I actually not sure in the interactive demo so many people, and I didn't we didn't make time to go back in. But I hope to get to try some of their interactive stuff, because for me as a designer, designing games and not just experiences as many other people are designing, I want to interact with my environment. How many in here has worked on VR games at all? Like also just during these days? Yes? Can I get some opinions on that? And just like shout out loud. What do you mean? Just like what do you feel about working in VR games and what you prefer to create?
So I did like ancient VR, like frame alternators and those old head-mounted displays where you're tracking this flyer separating the eye and stuff. Building games in that sense is really, really, really hard. Mostly what we did is we plugged it into the existing things and we modded Playful, because Quake was like the most stable case to put stuff on. Moving was terrible. But I did have fun with one thing where when you were really in the simulation, you could slowly change the angle of the world. Change the angle of the playground. And then slowly the people sitting on chairs would do this. So eventually at about 48 degrees they'd fall over. But that was literally like 10 years ago.
Did you want to say something before?
Like we were making something earlier, I don't understand why we call it strafing, because in the real world you can run around strafing, right? And you were saying like you get dizzy, but wouldn't you get dizzy as well if you walk forward? Because that's also movement you're not really doing.
Try to stand up.
Oh.
No, stand up.
Okay.
So when you walk around, do you walk like this all the time?
No, but if I have like a massive rocket launcher and I'm trying
exactly.
to see stuff.
Exactly, but the thing was that try to translate it, because it's something that's very interesting. Try to translate it into your head. Because for instance, if you jump to the side, right? In VR, it would just be sort of like jumping up and down. Because if you're strafing, if you're using controls to move sideways, but you're not actually moving, the thing is, this is something that's very hard to explain because you have to try it in game. But just try to close your eyes. Stand up. You have to stand up. Let's do some exercises here. Try to close your eyes. And then imagine that you have a controller in your hand and you're strafing. And then imagine the new picture. And then try to strafe, like physically strafe. Try to take a step sideways. How is that feeling compared to what you just imagined? Do you think it would work?
I think so.
There's only one way to find out. We should try it.
We did try it.
And how did you feel?
I didn't feel it improbable, but that's maybe just a personal thing.
But were you sitting down or were you standing up? Because I would love to hear about this experience.
I was sitting down. Maybe we should just
Yeah.
One doesn't move sideways like that, but couldn't one
to say, I'm not saying one or the other, but one can run straight with their head turned. Because when I played the game, it was, spoiler alert, it was chase paraphrase. I wanted to run forward but look back. Kind of like,
Yeah, exactly. Like you.
I mean, like I said a sentence to you about it, I remember what I thought about that almost felt like that broke the immersion to me, that I was running in this direction, I wanted to look back, and all of a sudden I was running in that direction, and I had to use like little finger acrobatics to go forward, turn back, and having to concentrate on all that at the same time.
Because the thing
broke the immersion more for me than I think potentially straight thing would have, because I don't see it as straight thing, I see it as running with your head turn.
Yeah. It's my biggest problem with the controls right now is that for you who haven't played it, let me see, click through it. We'll do this a couple of times. Let me show you a bit of video. So the thing is, you're being chased by this monster and you're moving forward, but as you're saying, whenever you actually want to see the monster, you're moving in that direction unless you quickly change your direction to go backwards, which you can do because it's very sort of easy controls. The thing is that I would also like to have you, sorry, I have this neck injury, so I'll do this slowly, but be able to turn backwards and then still keep in the same direction. But it's very hard for me to figure out how long you should be allowed to do that before you actually get motion sick, because I have to sort of think ahead in terms of how the player feels all the time and try to sort of meet the player somewhere in the middle, so it's going to make sense for everyone. So it's an issue I'm working with right now and try to figure out.
Yeah, and like without going to the custom controller, it is like you want the body, you want the direction of the body rather than the direction of the head. So there would have to be some tracking system for where you want to shoot
Yeah.
But what commercial software hardware is out there to do that is maybe not.
Moving in VR is actually really is a huge problem, like because that is your largest disconnect point between what you're experiencing in the simulation and what you're actually doing in real life. Because you are never going to be able to move in that space because that space doesn't exist. So one thing that I'd like to see people doing more is almost like you're saying that you have that introductory area that the players are moving through to try and get them to understand what's up, do this, there's different kinds of rules in this game mode. Almost like build models of different kinds of player movement, so different ways that players want to move, and allow them to choose between them, but choose based on, it's almost like a call response system in the level. So like if basically if they first see your turn and they try and go sideways immediately on the controller, then maybe they're okay with straight. You know, or if they're moving in one direction and it makes sense that they're running away from something, and they do this to look behind them.
Yeah, make that okay.
Yeah, and you have the PSP controller. So if they're not doing this, if they're moving the controller with them, then you know that they actually want to keep moving forward.
I need to learn how to code for real.
Place, they look like that, then go, okay, then they want to keep moving up, they are thinking in terms of their representation in the game mode of their head being independent of their legs.
Yeah.
And that is going to always be different according to player.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm also, so when we one day will ship this game, I'm also contemplating actually, even though I'm sort of against it because I myself also get very nauseous from it, but actually having some sort of a sit-down version, so you can, if you're not interested in standing up for however long however long time the game is going to take to play through, so we actually have a sit-down version, and then just optimize the controls so they're sort of the least painful as I can get them to be. But I really like yours, like actually determining the player input and the player behavior, and then change the controls accordingly inside of the game. Gosh, I would really have to learn how to code for real.
I'm wondering, like, it sounds to me that most of the problems could be solved with Kinect, and we play with Kinect and VR.
No, but a lot of my friends have. But that would also. So what I'm worried about with adding too many different controls, so we don't know which platform we're going to launch it on yet. I'm still sort of seeing what's going on out there with hardware developers that are interesting and so on. But what I would worry about is that if you for instance, have it with a Kinect, you would have to have a Kinect and some VR device and something else maybe. So that would very much limit the people who would be able to play it. And to be honest, we don't know which platform we're going to shoot it out on. I hope there would be one where it makes sense to stand up and do stuff at the same time. But I know a lot of people are doing that. The thing is with Kinect and a lot of other motion controllers is that they're not necessarily very precise. And you know, like Kinect games can be really fun if you're doing like sports games or boxing games or whatnot, where it doesn't matter whether you're like exactly on or you're more doing it as a party game. But for something as VR, if the controls are not exactly, if the controls are not spot on and really calibrated with your movement, it's very easy to break the immersiveness. So that's one of the things I would worry about in that sense. Oh, got killed by a wolf, huh? I wanted to show you something that I really like. And that's what a company called Servios are doing. So when I got to try it, that was last year right after GDC, because the guys were in San Francisco at the time. At least two of them were. But they're working out of like close to Los Angeles, in that area. Also USC students. So what they've done is that, at least the thing where I got to try back then, was that they kind of had the laptop in a backpack. And then you had a camera up in the ceiling somewhere, and they had something equivalent to a Move controller. You used to do in a Move controller, but had something equivalent to a Move controller. Strapped up here, and you could actually walk around pretty freely. And then you played with the Hydras from Razer, and that was an amazing experience. Two issues I had with it was one thing was you had an avatar, and it was actually pretty well calibrated. Like these guys really know what they're doing, but they were not like one-to-one when I looked down, and I had to look down to pick up weapons and have a whiplash in my neck, which means whenever I look down, I get insanely dizzy, and then it was not mapped one-to-one, which meant that I was just like about to fall over whenever I looked down. I would be like, whoa! So, and I hate to admit this as a VR designer, but I actually had to step out of that VR experience after 10-15 minutes because I was so dizzy whenever I looked down. And another thing is, I think in VR games, it's not necessarily the best thing to ask people to look down, because that means, like if you see me standing up, when I'm standing like this, if I'm looking up, I'm just sort of more straight and more aware of where my balance point is. But if you're looking down and leaning over, your balance part is a little bit harder to find. And there is all like these small things that you have to think about when you're doing something that's actually an interactive experience compared to doing something where you, for instance, just sit in a roller coaster. I don't know how many of you got to try the roller coaster experience. I know it was in Poland when we were exhibiting.
A real one or the Oculus?
Oh, the Oculus one. I've tried a real one. But a lot of people told me, I haven't actually tried it myself because I'm like, I don't necessarily need to go into something that I know will make myself motion sick. But it can be fun and try an experience and like try to see something in 3D, and it could be a movie or whatnot. But there's just so much more to it when you can actually interact with the environment. There's a lot of people making these experiences that are pretty scary, like dreadful, where you're standing on one block and like you have to look down. Or where you get your head chopped off, as Erki, who unfortunately didn't make it down here, he made. If any of you, do you know about this union, where you get your head chopped off? Yes. So Erki made that at a game jam 1.5 years ago with one of the Oculuses that we snatched from Unity. And it's amazing because none of us had really tried the Oculus before he made this game. And suddenly he just became world famous for having made this crazy game where you get your head chopped off. And I think, at least in Copenhagen, for us and many places sort of in Northern Europe, that was one of the first VR experiences we had. And it was like, wow, it's not really a game because you don't do much, it's an experience. And then people started thinking, okay, what if we actually interact with the environment? So would you come up here and tell a little bit about your experiences with VR?
Yeah. Oh. But my opinion is totally different because you're saying, like when I looked at your title, I was like, hey, you're going to like go against experiences. Hey, let's make VR games, but you're like totally different.
I promised that I wouldn't rant too much because I always rant.
Yeah, So the thing is, what I think is totally different. You shouldn't make VR experiences. you should make VR games. And like
Well,
the
that
worst.
but I'm just not going to criticize the experiences.
Yeah, I don't criticize. It's like it's really nice to do, but it's really hard to do. As you said, like there are many things. So what's easy and like cool to do is to make games. Like for example, a cool VR game. I think more VR games should not be FPSs, like first-person games. Like think about a StarCraft. You're playing StarCraft, and you're just looking in an Oculus on a map. So like, hey, there's an enemy base, and you just do that, and you see it from afar. Like how cool is that? There's like an Astos game.
So this is where we disagree. Now we get
Yeah.
the point.
There's like Astos game. There's like 2D platformer, but it has like an Oculus version, and you can just look around to the front and to the back. I think this is the kind of things we should make. And yeah, this is where we disagree.
There we very much disagree. Because I want games. Fuck's sake. Oh, I'm trying again. We have this incredible medium that we can develop games for now. And what I'm worried about, how long time do I have? Oh, it's over. Woo! I'll speed it up. What I'm worrying about is that, first of all, let me just shortly introduce this. How many people know about this? You put in a Samsung device, it's not out yet, but you put in a Samsung device, Samsung, Oculus, I work together on it. I tried it on, and it was kind of nice, there were no wires, but my issue was probably the content that I saw. Like, there was a 3D cinema, and I could see a movie, and I could play a platformer. And I like first-person experiences. I like that you actually feel you're present into, like, inside another world. And you get to experience a whole nother world. And you can do that because you can jump in and out of a VR game. But the thing is that, why not use that medium? Because what I'm worried about is that when people start to ship the hardware, there will be a lot of content out there that might as well be done on a 2D screen. And that's not bloody damn interesting to me. Like, and that's actually my main point. Gosh, I'm getting stressed because I'm out of time. But my main point is that do games for this thing. Don't just do a game and like add the support for VR, design for it. And I know this was not very much a design talk.
Yes, there's not FPSs.
Just not FPSs. So don't shoot anyone in there. First person shooters, we just shoot fireballs. But it's just, you have this new medium and it's a whole another way of thinking. And that should be what people design for, because especially if I'm super biased VR designer myself, because if there's no good content out there, then people don't want to buy the devices, and then people don't want to play the games that we make. And I guess that's how I should end this.
Let's have 2 questions, please. 2 questions?
Oh, we already had questions.
Oh, okay.
No,
Cool.
come with them. Who wants to ask questions? Ask questions. Ask questions. Yes.
So, 10, 12 years ago, when HTTP first started appearing, a lot of people were getting into VR because it was supposed to be easier for people to use than traditional computer experiences and stuff. We did a lot of research around training and stuff like that. And what sort of seemed to have happened is that it went and fell over. And that might have been because of hardware, that might have been because of a whole bunch of different reasons. But do you think that the Oculus and the current intention, because Sony's done like VR stuff before, with the viewers and the 320p. What's different about this one?
I think what's different about this time is that Oculus actually appeared and gave us something we could get our hands on without being at Sony or being at a research lab at a university. So normal people like me could actually have the device to work on, and we can take it places and exhibit it, and let people who didn't necessarily ever play a game before try it. So I've been many crazy places with this game, and I would say maybe 50% not 50% I put it hands up are not like hardcore gamers, and some of them never played a video game before. And I even like have 70-year-old women playing the game, and I have small kids, which are apparently not allowed to now with the healthy safety warning from Oculus, but I had small kids playing it. And I think as long as you do very intuitive controls and really explain things well, and have like sort of what we were talking about, have a design where you lure people into the VR experience, I think that's going to help a lot. Because of course, me as a developer, I have an interest in VR becoming a mainstream product. I just hope that the products that will be out there are so interesting, so people are interested in in playing other VR products and playing games, because a lot of people that I know sort of in this sort of sub-circles of some of the hardware developers, they very often say, oh, my wife said that this could be very amazing and she would do like an experience for it, or how like you could have a Skype call in VR and wouldn't that just be awesome and stuff like that, where I'm like, well, why is that cool, man? You have this medium, let's like make something that's amazing where it really suits VR. And I think the main thing is that we finally, like, with so many people who, like, still not that many Oculuses out there, but they're accessible. I can take this to event. People who have never tried VR before can try it. So there's more awareness about it now, and I think if the hardware developers do it right, and also collaborate, which I know Valve is very good at, and I love what Valve is doing, because they're helping out so many hardware developers, they're helping out us developers, giving out advice, because they're very open about their research, which is very nice. So if everyone works together and we create great content, I think we can make it. But if we don't, then it might just be turning out as you said it did last time, right? Which is sad, because now we actually have access to something that's somewhat working.
You get to so many things, the TVs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the thing is just like if the stuff that you can use it for is not very interesting to what we have now, people will probably not use it, right? You have to create something extraordinary with it, and we still don't know when anyone is going to launch their hardware devices, which means that all VR developers got to like, yeah, this is kind of cool. We can sell it to other developers, because that's pretty much what the indie scene is about, right? But anyways, like, we need to get a hold of the consumer market. I know a lot of people were ranting, including myself, when Oculus was acquired by Facebook, because we were super worried it would become super mainstream. I saw that Oculus printed an article, I got an article printed recently where they said like, hey, like VR will be cool if our competitors doesn't fuck it up. Well, you guys can't fuck it up either, right? Because then it's just never going to be anything interesting. Would be nice if, yeah, sorry?
My next question, I think to add, 10 years ago, people didn't own 3D TVs in their lounges. I think as a population, people are a lot more open to technology now, and open to the idea of this experience.
What I'm worried about, I'm not super knowledgeable about 3D television, but I'm worried about that's just a phase. And I'm worried that people are going to say VR is also just a phase. That like, oh, now it's cool to have a 3D television, and then it wasn't that cool, and that people will feel about the same thing about VR before it really picks up. And that's my main worry.
I think 2D is on its way out.
No more 2D?
In 10 years, no one's going to have a 2D TV.
I don't even have a 2D. 2D is so last decade.
Exactly.
One last.
So I going on from that question to a completely different spot now. Movement is always really hard in VR. Why aren't we seeing people build cockpits?
Cockpits?
Yeah, like a cockpit game solves a lot of the problems that you have.
Yeah.
This is how
So building the physical cockpit, because I see a lot of space games where they put people inside of a cockpit. So again, I don't find that interesting. I played the Evo Curia and I was so not amazed, and I was so unhappy. Now I'm rambling. Is this on camera? I was so unhappy that I saw Oculus had done this, in my opinion, fuck up with limiting you in your movement and forcing you to sit down. And I know that's what Oculus want, and they're probably thinking liability and probably thinking people who have no clue about playing games to have a safe experience. But I just find it very, very sad, because they might be alienating developers like me if they sort of determine what we can do and what we should do. I know a lot of people are saying, well, cockpit is the solution because you're in a safe environment, you can see your boundaries, you can sit down, relax on your couch while playing. And there are also amazing games where you're lying down, for instance, Sunset by Robin or Not. That's an amazing experience. But again, like, you kind of lock in the player and you lock in the game developers and want to do something out of the box, which I find a little bit sad. That's where I prefer where Sony and Valve are doing, and I'm out of time. And I started to rant. Oops. Over.